The Whitmore table. The Whitmore dining room glows as Margaret perfects the arrangement. Charles checks his pocket watch, impatience wrinkling the linen. Sarah smooths her dress. Unease flickers behind polished manners. Michael reaches for wine as questions curdle in the air. David trades glances with Sarah, guarding words behind restraint. The bell tolls through the house. Chairs scrape on polished floor. Vincent arrives, immaculate edges softened by strain. Margaret carves with ritual precision. Vincent watches, composed. A toast is raised to family and to new partnerships. David's glass barely meets his lips. Doubt dims the shine. The manila envelope lands between salt and pepper like a charge. Vincent's face cools. The knife stills against the beef. David presents contamination. Numbers that poison the room. Sarah trembles. Water glass tipping the calm off balance. Michael leans in. Curiosity sharpening into concern. Margaret's knife falls. Ritual fractures into alarm. Charles confronts Vincent. Decades of trust turn heavy. Silence tightens as the chandelier burns brighter than comfort. Margaret withdraws to the kitchen. Composure stitched by habit. Charles's verdict drops. 2 words that shatter ceremony. Vincent staggers back. Crystal shivers on the sideboard. Accusations turn. David's name hangs like smoke over silver. Michael reaches for proof, but David's hand slams ownership. Sarah's question cuts. The chandelier trembles in her eyes. Chairs scrape. The ritual table becomes an arena. Hands meet at throats and shoulders. Crystal sings with impact. A wet gasp. The chandelier watches the collapse. Vincent lies staring upward. Blood threads into the pale carpet. David stands shaking, hands empty, breath harsh in warm light. Michael drops to his knees, searching a neck for hope. From the kitchen, a hum drifts, unaware of the room stilled. Sarah backs away, both hands sealing shock against her mouth. Charles stands transfixed, eyes fixed on the unmoving form. The clock tolls 9. The table remains cruelly perfect. David's denial breaks, voice raw in the softened glow. In the kitchen, the humming stops, sweetness the kind we choose to be. Footsteps near the kitchen draw closer like a countdown. David whispers, panic cracking his breath. We have to move him. Sarah hisses back, eyes blazing. He's dead, David. Michael kneels, clinical focus replacing shock. Charles cuts in, voice cold and decisive. Absolutely not. What happened? Every detail. Charles demands of David. Michael finds blood and hair at the table's corner. Accusations blaze. The Camden Street deal, the stolen books. Sarah pivots, grasping for a narrative of self-defense. Charles's calculus sharpens, angles and outcomes align. The kitchen door swings. Margaret enters with a silver tray. Porcelain explodes across the rug as the tray slips. Margaret's scream climbs, hands clamped to her mouth. Charles reaches out, trying to contain the collapse. Sarah names it without flinching. Vincent's dead. David, brittle with grievance, spits his justification. Michael rises, refusing the family's closing ranks. Accusation hardens. Murder versus self-defense. Margaret falters, grief mixing with calculation. David's fists clench as loyalty becomes demand. The family script forms. Truth is a negotiable currency. Michael names it, cover up, guilt for life. Margaret whispers a terrible logic. Choose the kind of guilty. David pulls out his phone, calling a man with a truck. Plans accelerate. The Camden Street site becomes a grave. Sarah grips Michael's arm, pleading for their children's future. Agreement hangs like smoke, a story they all repeat. Margaret rises, already cleaning in her mind. Michael hears himself agree to move the car. The decision fixes. Vincent left alive and angry. Margaret and Sarah begin restoring an impossible normal. David scrolls for a driver who won't ask questions. Michael stares at the man who was just a dinner guest. The grandfather clock marks 10. A siren threads the night. Keys gleam on linen. Final tasks divide and bind them. Charles meets Michael's gaze. Together, coffin lid morning. 6:17 a.m. A sharp, commanding knock slices through the quiet house. Police, open up. The demand reverberates through the hallway. Charles steadies his voice. Stay calm. Remember the story. The pounding grows urgent. Glass shivers in its frame. Charles opens the door, feigning confusion at the hour. Morrison introduces himself and the missing man, Vincent Corelli. Charles performs concern. Is Vincent all right? They step inside. Charles guides them away from the dining room. In the living room, eyes sweep, cataloging details. They ask for David. Charles stalls, then concedes. David appears on the stairs, already dressed and pale. Detective Morrison engages David, reading him with care. Business disagreements surface. David minimizes the conflict. The female detective notes environmental fraud allegations. David's mask slips. Charles cuts him off sharply. Morrison's radio crackles. The room seems to chill. Morrison presents a warrant. Authority becomes undeniable. Cell phone records tie Vincent's last call to this address. Margaret appears, ashen, at the top of the stairs. The front door opens again. Michael steps in and freezes. Sarah claims Michael was at the hospital. Doubt thickens. The female detective counters. Records don't match the story. Michael's cup falls. Coffee explodes across the floor. Silence tightens as Morrison asks for the truth. Blood found in the car. DNA requests are coming. Margaret falters on the steps, grief and terror colliding. Morrison delivers the blow. Vincent Corelli is dead. Sarah grips the banister. Charles nearly buckles. David edges toward the kitchen. Officers move to block. Morrison draws his weapon. The flight stops cold. Cuffs secure. The choice becomes irreversible. He breaks. It was an accident. The story spills out. Charles pleads for silence. The words keep coming. Officers lead David away. His legs almost fail him. He turns, pleading, "Dad, you'll fix this, right?" The door closes like a coffin lid. Silent, concrete silence. Charles climbs the slick courthouse steps, dread tightening with every echoing footfall. He pauses beneath the granite columns, gathering himself before entering. Inside, the Metro Criminal Justice Center hums with tense, rain-soaked energy. The courtroom buzzes as reporters and spectators settle into wooden benches. The Whitmore family fills the first row, a portrait of strained composure. Michael fidgets with his tie, avoiding every curious glance around him. David stares ahead, his ill-fitting suit hanging off a diminished frame. Blackwood leans into counsel, but David's gaze fixes on the prosecution. Across the aisle, Catherine Webb organizes exhibits with surgical efficiency. Webb rises. "Your Honor." The prosecution calls Detective James Morrison. Detective Morrison approaches the stand with practiced, measured steps. He is sworn in, settles into the chair, hands folded on the railing. Webb. Describe the recovery of Vincent Corelli's body on Camden Street. A projected photo shows rebar and a rough slab where the body was found. Morrison details timing. Concrete poured 5 to 6 hours before discovery. Webb. Cause of death? Morrison. Blunt force trauma, depressed skull fracture. At the defense table, David flinches, fingers tightening on polished wood. Blackwood watches, unreadable. As the jurors take careful notes, Webb presses. No defensive wounds on the victim, clothing intact but bloody. She notes. The defendant showed no injuries consistent with a struggle. Judge Harrison overrules, allowing the detective's observations to stand. Morrison describes blood traces in the dining room, contradicting an accident. A close look at the exhibit. Fine spatter and luminol markers by the rug. Webb elicits evidence of cleaning. Fresh supplies, luminol glow and sink trap. Sarah stifles a sound. Michael reaches to comfort and is shrugged off. Margaret grips a tissue box, eyes red and hollow above trembling hands. Across them, David's shoulders shake with contained, voiceless sobs. Morrison details fraud, falsified reports, bribes, and Camden Street deceit. On screen, laptop records, EPA emails, and a draft whistleblower report. Charles absorbs the collapse of lies. The color drains from his face. Webb. Calls and texts show a planned dinner and a final confrontation. Displayed text. "We settle this tonight," and a plea to stop before harm. David breaks. His silent sobs ripple through the hushed courtroom. Blackwood advances. Immediate admissions. A man overwhelmed by guilt. Morrison replies. Evidence led to lies, the dining room, and a concrete grave. The gavel falls for lunch recess. Certainty settles over